Whichever horses that you might have backed for Cheltenham or are considering having a bet on at Cheltenham, there is no doubt that there is one result that will warm the heart more than any other, and has done already with his success in November at the Cheltenham November fixture, and that is Lalor, who struck then and hopes to strike again in this year's Arkle. For my first guest today, who has had an extraordinarily turbulent year, but one which has inspired an awful lot of people. She is, of course, Kayley Woollacott. Kayley, good morning and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
How is Lalor? Because you worked him yesterday at Exeter. He is your stable star. He is the foundation stone upon which you are rebuilding not only your career but also your life and your daughter's life.
Yeah.
How's he getting on?
He's really well, touch wood, at the minute. He did a lovely piece of work yesterday. It's great to have Dickie back on board and do something a bit different. Yeah, did a lovely piece of work and just got to keep him sound and healthy for the next 2 weeks, I suppose.
And when you're a small yard and you just get that one really, really talented horse, and we know what he did for Richard, we know what he's done for you, how much pressure do you feel?
Pressure is something I think that you can manage. It has to be managed, I think. If I think about it too much, it can blow your brain a little bit. But you can let it become a bit of a circus, but we just try and do him day to day. We know him, we know what he's capable of, and it's just trying to get him there on the day, fit, healthy, and show what he can do, I suppose, yeah.
And plotting your way to Cheltenham, you've had to be quite brave, because he didn't like the soft ground at Sandown over Christmas, and then it's a question of, right, how do we get him there in one piece, but get him sufficiently conditioned to give of his best? It must have given you a few sleepless nights. Yeah,
the whole season so far has. I was convinced when he came in from the summer that we'd be going for a little novice chase out of the way. He'd probably be favourite and have a little go round, learn a lot and hopefully win, and there wouldn't be too much attention on him, and it just kept going out the window with the dry weather. That gave me a lot of stress to suddenly find myself starting out in a grade 2 at Cheltenham, and we just, changed our expectations a bit, just to have a good, learning experience. We knew he was in good form. We knew, we thought he'd run well, but we didn't expect him to quite do that. And then obviously going to Sandown, the pressure, hikes up again, because everybody just expects him to just do exactly the same. But it was a completely different day, and he learnt a lot. But the one thing with him is he is better after a break. He's always run well, very fresh. So it just seemed a sensible thing to do. We couldn't get to Doncaster, it was too firm. I couldn't risk him. So we've just got to do what we've got to do.
And you were very happy with yesterday. What did he actually do?
He did a 2-mile piece of work. They had, sort of started at the winning post, warmed up round the top, and just increased the light, quickened, and did a good piece up the straight, up the hill. So, yeah.
And Richard was riding him?
Yeah.
He was happy?
Yeah, really pleased. Works upside the King's Rit. He's another, he's probably the second best horse I've got. He's a very, very good workhorse. So, yeah, it's a good piece of work to judge where they both were, really.
And how much more serious work can you do between now and Cheltenham, or is it just a question of keeping him ticking over?
Yeah, we'll keep him ticking over. He will have to do some pieces of work. He's a big, burly, stuffy type of chap, so he will have to keep working. But, that was a good indicator yesterday.
Now, Katie Rudd, who sold you the horse, is insistent that his name's Lalor. Everybody here calls him Lalor. Your owners call him Lalor, so we're going with Lalor for the time being, aren't we?
Yeah, well, everybody at home, we call him Lalor. He's been Lalor from the day he arrived. Richard and I have always called him Lalor. His owners have always called him Lalor. Bella calls him Lalor. Whether it rightly or wrongly, that's what he gets called at home. So that's what we'll continue doing.
Bella's your young daughter. Now, she's the boss, essentially, so if she calls him Lalor, you have to go with it. Yeah,
she's definitely the boss.
And how's she doing?
She's very well, yeah. She really enjoys the horses, really enjoys it all, loves Lalor and gets really involved, so.
It's over a year now since you lost Richard,
yeah.
since he took his own life. That was the 22nd of January, 2018.
Yeah.
I remember seeing you maybe 2 or 3 weeks after that, and you were out there saddling horses, getting on with the job. To see you now compared to then I said it was a truly inspiring and inspirational story. I suspect you don't really think that you're inspiring other people? You're just getting on with it?
No, it's difficult because for me, I don't actually remember too much. It's a bit foggy and hazy. You know, the one thing I had to concentrate on, my priority was Bella, and I didn't want our life and her life to crash around us. So I tried to keep as much of it as stable as possible and consistent, even if it was only on a temporary basis. And horses, for me, growing up, were a big route of escape. You know, bad day at school, boyfriend trouble, anything like that. It's horses. You know, you go to horses, and it would always sort my brain out. So I was quite adamant that I had to keep that going just until I could get my head straight enough to work out what we were going to do and what was going to happen. And so I was really, really lucky. The owners, you know, the right people supported me, and I could keep, to an extent, what we had going, you know, kept going. And so I was adamant. I had a list of commitments that Richard had already made, you know, whether that be the Cleve, the Betfair. He'd made a lot of entries going forward, the Devon National. You know, I was adamant that I was going to see those out and then make a decision. And so while it may have looked like I was just carrying on, I just focused on just trying to get all of that done, and, you know, for Bella, just to keep it as consistent and together as I could, really, without, you know, it was still very traumatic, but, you know, did our best.
Was it a sense of, like, each little day was a victory? So you get to the end of the day and think, we've managed another one, we've managed another one, we've managed another one, taking it in small steps?
Yeah, each day was different. Look, I can't say I had days where I refused to get out of bed, you know, but I was really lucky to be surrounded by people that said, no, that's not happening. You know, you've got stuff to do, you've got people around you that need you, and I was really lucky to have that support. Every day was different. Some days I'd definitely be like, right, okay, I can cope, you know, this is where we're going, this is what we're doing, and then other days I just couldn't see how it was all gonna get better. I just couldn't see where I was going. And again, yeah, just lucky to be surrounded by people that made sure that my life, Bella's life, you know, was gonna be okay.
There is a handful of people who experienced the sort of personal tragedy that your family did, but your situation is unusual insofar as it's being played out semi-publicly, which is very difficult indeed. So do you have to sort of shut out the surround sound in a sense sometimes? Yeah,
you have to deal with things, I think, in your own way, and like you say, it has been at times quite public, and you can subject yourself to criticism and other people's opinions on how you deal with things, or positive things. You know, there was a mixture of both, and I think you just have to do things your own way. You have to learn, you know, you have to do what you think is right, and listen to the people close to you, and you know, like I said, I've had a lot of support, and we've got through, and you know, it's been a very mad 12 months, but we've got there, and then it keeps going. So.
And what sort of character are you, do you think, to be able to deal with the situation that you've been put in?
I don't know. I think my family, my sister, and that they'd say I was fairly mentally quite tough, and they'd always say, you know, I have, although I didn't feel it at the time, I suppose you have to be quite tough, but I just focused on Bella. I could not see, you know, I think she went to nursery one day, and when I picked her up, the teachers said she just keeps saying that she doesn't want Mummy to be sad, and why is Mummy so sad? And that broke my heart a little bit. And you know, you just have to focus on the things that, you know, going forward, that you just have to get on with things.
And that bond between the two of you now must be extraordinary. Yeah,
it's changed things. Yeah, definitely. She was a real daddy's girl, and she loved her dad. But I think, yeah, since definitely, it's obviously, you know, she's very precious to me, and she's my main priority.
similar token, it would be very easy for you to have said, I don't really want to talk about the way that Richard chose to end his life, because it's just not something I want to keep talking about. But you've expressly been open about it because you want to help other people who are in a similar situation, and your commitment to doing good for mental health has been pretty vivid. Yeah,
I think it's something that has to be talked about. I think that was one of the biggest downfalls of our relationship, and also our, you know, the way things ended up, is we didn't really talk about it, whether, you know, and we didn't seek the help that we needed, and we dealt with it in a way that didn't work in the end. You know, and I think not only do people need support that have those mental health struggles, or, you know, that struggle, and it's okay to struggle, you know, definitely since January, and since I've taken up things on in a different role, I've felt a lot of different pressures and had bad days, good days, and so I can sort of understand it a little bit more now. But also for the support for people a bit like me that live with people that are struggling and don't really understand it, it's hard, you know, and if you can talk about it, help other people, you know, it can only be a good thing.
Do you think you do understand it better now?
Better. It's still really hard, and it's a very complex thing, and I think that's one of the reasons that, you know, maybe people don't talk about it. If you don't really understand it, it's quite difficult to then, you know, start delving into things you really don't understand, and the brain is very complex, and you know, sometimes it is just better just to, you know, push it aside and ignore it and carry on about something else. But I definitely understand, you know, different things more, and sadly I wish, you know, I'd be able to do things differently, but I can't. And, you know, so if we can do positive things going forward, it's something for Bella to look back on as well, and when she grows up, mental health is going to be very, very different in her generation. You know, it is going to be so different, so if she can look back and try and understand, you know, her childhood and what we went through, yeah, it's a good thing.
People rather tritely always say that time is a great healer. It can't completely heal anything that you've been through, but you can get better, I suppose, as time goes on a little bit. From then to now, do you reflect upon Richard's life more positively than you did immediately after he chose to end it?
Yeah, you go through different stages. I was very angry for a long time. Probably still am a little bit, but you definitely, like, as time goes on, you learn to understand things, take things on board, you know, and just look at it a little bit differently and remember different things, and like you say, yeah, definitely think more positively about it now. You remember a lot of good times, but you have to go forward, and I just want Bella to be able to look back at all the amazing things he did, and what, you know, how brilliant a person he was, despite, you know, what else he suffered with.
It's actually quite remarkable, isn't it, to think that somebody can be that talented and that capable of actually achieving some pretty extraordinary things as a rider, a very brave rider, swashbuckling rider, trainer who's sort of starting from relatively near the bottom and making a real success of it, yet is probably only operating on about 20% capacity. Yeah,
like I say, it's amazing how the brain works, you know, from an outside point of view. Yeah, he was a fantastic rider, amateur jockey, very, very tough. Training, you know, he taught me so much. When I met him, you know, I was trying to train, but I was hopeless, and he taught me a massive amount, and you know, yeah, he was capable of a lot. So that's the things that I want Bella to focus on when she looks back.
I think what I've loved about you this season, it's not just that you want to carry on training, it's that you want to train and be good and do it properly and be commercially successful, and I think that's quite obvious. That again is a risk in itself.
Yeah. So it's all been a risk, and it's all. Thankfully, so far it's gone well. But like I said, I've surrounded myself with people that help. You know, they can really do things you know, whether it be my sister who does a lot on the commercial side and promoting us, and or the lads in the yard. You know, was really conscious that if we were going to do it, we wanted to do it well. So yeah.
And this is your sister Steph, who has worked in worked for GBR for a long time, and then went to Australia, and then came back to support you. Could you have done this without her?
No, absolutely not. No, she's massively instrumental in our day-to-day, and also, you know, she's very, very special. You know, to come back, just to absolutely abandon what life she had in Australia, to come back and make sure mine didn't crash is, you know, it's unbelievable. And, you know, she's a very determined, successful person. So, you know, with her on board, we were always going to be a lot better off.
There's obviously some serious steel in the Jones family.
Yeah, we're pretty, probably pretty determined people.
Now, she's raising some money for Mind, the well-known mental health charity.
Yeah.
Now, just tell us what she's doing.
Oh, yeah, no, you're asking. I think, so her and Richard Johnson's wife, Fiona, they are doing a trekking up Machu Picchu in Peru. I think it's over 10 days. So she's always been one to take on a challenge every year, and thankfully I'm not roped in this year, which she did last year.
I swear every time someone comes on this programme they're talking about some extraordinary feat of physical endeavour, and it makes me feel completely and hopelessly inadequate. But there is the Virgin Money page if you want to support Steph, who is raising money for Mind in Richard's memory. virginmoneygiving.com/SH Jones 208. And you did do the Brecon Beacons last year, didn't you?
We did the Welsh 3000. So it was 15 peaks. We did it over 3 days, and it was pretty testing. Bearing in mind, I'd only walked around the block once before we went. I didn't seem to fit in any training, so I found it particularly grueling. I did say a lot of swear words, and I did find it very hard. But I think it was good that I was, Steph made me do it, and I left a lot up there.
That's good.
Yeah, it did work out very well, but at the time I was, it was pretty tough.
So sort of pushing yourself physically, pushing yourself mentally, you actually emerged and felt like a strong person for doing it. Yeah,
just at the end of it, it's, like you say, it was very physically tough. I felt very broken and tired and mentally just overdone. But when I got home, you know, at the end of it, it was done. And then from that point, I said, right, that's it. You know, I'm going to concentrate on me now for a little bit. You know, so yeah.
And how are you finding the day-to-day running of a burgeoning training business? How's that going?
The day-to-day stuff is fine. Bearing in mind, Richard, the way that Richard and I worked, we had 2 separate yards. So I was very used to running sort of 20-odd horses. They were pointers, but as, from a day-to-day running point of view, you know, it's not a lot's changed. I obviously have more on my head than before, but it's something that, you know, been quite used to over the last 10 years. It's almost been a comfort. You know, I know my day-to-day stuff is fine. Yeah.
Because you've talked about what happened to Richard and what happened to you quite openly, and you've become a source of inspiration for a lot of people. Have you found people coming to ask you for advice?
Not advice. I do get a lot of people say, "Wow, I think what you've done is wonderful, and you know, keep doing it." And that's a little bit strange, you know, at times, because I just think, well, like, what else can you do? I couldn't sit on the floor and just say, well, you know, everything's got, you know, I couldn't do that. So I only did what I thought, you know, was really the only option. But I do get, a lot of nice people say nice things, and, you know, so it's really helpful, especially when you have a bad day and you think, why the bloody hell am I doing this? It's lovely.
The extraordinary paradox of horses and training, of course, is it can impose an enormous amount of mental pressure upon you, which evidently he found incredibly difficult. But also it can revivify you and energise you, like it always has done for you. You said the power of the horse is an extraordinary thing. The power of animals are an extraordinary thing if you're that way inclined. Yeah,
I mean, like I said, horses have always been an escape for me and working. But at the same time, I suppose since taking over the restaurant and having it in my name, it's a little bit different. You know, I do get a lot more insight to that this is on your head. This is, you know, particularly as, you know, when we first started, like, Lalor was very disappointing in the Betfair, you know. It was very foggy at that time. I probably didn't take as much notice than, you know, I was just trying to see out those dates.
I'd say that was a pretty tough day.
It was a really tough day. Similarly, like the Cleve, that was horrendous, really. But Zero Goggles, he did his best, and it's just, yeah, the pressure that, you know, I do see that now is tough. And when you really, like, leading up to Cheltenham, I wasn't on great form that morning. But when I go home, and then the next day, you walk in that barn and they're all quiet and they're all eating, and, you know, that is the other side for me. That's a real karma, and, you know, I can see why I do it and why I love them.
Does it, phrase this carefully, does it frighten you how emotionally involved you've become in one horse, in Lalor?
Yeah, it's, and yeah, a lot of friends have always said to me, don't, you know, you can't base your life on one horse and one result, and that's very true. Look what he's done for me personally, professionally. You know, he's already done enough. You know, he's like, that can't change. But I do try and keep a little bit of perspective. You know, the fact that Bella's healthy, I'm healthy. You know, if it all went tomorrow, if God forbid anything happened to him, you know, I think I've thought about it, but at the same time, you have to chase your dreams, don't you? And that's what we dreamt about when we started doing this, was getting our hands on a Grade 1 horse, a really good horse. And it's like, we may as well have been searching for needles in haystacks, you know, the odds that we were playing at getting a horse like him. So you have to see that through, and hopefully, you know, whatever happens, he's always been a star for us.
And long may it continue.
Yeah.
I know you're going to stay with us for a little while to talk about yesterday's racing, and Harry and Maddie are coming in. But for the moment, Kayley Woollacott, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.